Hello, and a very warm welcome to A Lady Well Traveled. I'm your host and creator, Shannon Bednarova, and I'm really delighted that you've joined me today. If this is your first time joining me, I'm going to give you a little map of where we usually travel together. This podcast is about exploring our magnificent world with completely new eyes that are curious, open, and ready to learn. We talk about the places that captivate us, the people who make them memorable, the cultures that challenge our assumptions, and the history that gives every destination a new story. We taste unfamiliar foods, we wander down ancient streets, and we explore those civilizations that are maybe different than the world in which we live in today. And every now and then, we try to find some magic in the places that otherwise we might simply pass by. And of course, I'm going to share some practical travel tips with you, some lessons that I've learned, and some painful mistakes that I might have made along the way, because I think that's part of travel. It's learning all of those things. Travel should be meaningful and adventurous. And I'm going to try to help you make your travel a little bit less stressful. So today, I'm very excited to have a guest with me on the show. And his name is Neil Laird. He's a multiple Emmy-nominated director of historical films, and he's produced more than 100 programs around the world. He's a novelist, an avid student of ancient history, and an extraordinarily well-traveled man who's visited more than 70 countries. Now, perhaps more relevant to our discussion today, Neil has an avid passion for the Middle East, and he really loves its rich culture and history. Our topic today, and Neil is going to help me explore this, is understanding the Middle East in a time of war. It's a historical, cultural, and social discussion to help travelers make informed decisions about their trip. It's an ambitious subject and one I think that you're going to enjoy. So, Neil, welcome to A Lady Well Traveled. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for the invitation, Shannon. It's lovely to be here.
Absolutely. Now, did I miss anything that you want to bring up
That was a
about
long
your
and
background?
impressive resume. Thank you.
Oh,
Hired you
yes,
as my
absolutely.
marketing exec. Yeah, you were fantastic.
Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and jump in because we've got a lot to talk about. Now, this current conflict that we're in involving Israel, Iran, the United States, and a lot of other countries that have joined in and kind of come in, go out, come in, go out. It's dramatically changed the security landscape in the Middle East. And there are a lot of questions for ordinary people who might want to travel to the Middle East. And it's hard to understand exactly what's going on, who's involved, where to go, is it safe, and especially when it involves travel and exploration. Let's talk about this. How different is the Middle East that you've experienced in the past during your travels from the ones that we see on the news every night or every day when we tune in? I think that's important to share with our listeners.
It's a great first question because the answer is immensely different. It's
Okay.
expeditiously so because what we fear isn't always what we see, obviously, when we travel. All travel begins with some sort of fear, whether it's Europe or the Middle East or anywhere else. And I think the Middle East, because we've grown up in a time of so much strife, from the Iranian Revolution to 9/11, everything in between, people automatically assume that that is a danger zone and Americans are not invited or Europeans are not invited. And it's simply not true. The politics, the one thing I try to do in all my films and my travel, both professionally and as a tourist, is separate the politics from the people. And when you get on the ground, you realize that's a very easy thing to do. I remember my first trip to Jordan and the Middle East right after the first Persian Gulf War in 91. And there were people coming up to me in the streets of Amman hugging me and saying, thank you for not seeing us as the politics that's going on. They were so grateful that we
Uh-huh.
still wanted to spend time with them, to come in and explore their culture and their country. And that's still very much the case. And then, now that said, we can't be naive and say there's no dangers at all in this part of the world,
Uh-huh.
particularly now We're recording this in late summer of 26, and the Iranian war with Israel and the US is very much on. You
Mhm.
couldn't possibly get to Iran if you tried right now, and I wouldn't recommend it. I've been there a couple times when times were better.
Mhm.
Israel as well. Israel is still safe to go to, and we can break all this down later, but you have to be cautious about what you say and where you go. But other
Mhm.
places like Egypt is my favorite place in the world. I've been to Egypt
Mhm.
dozens of times. And unfortunately, anytime there's any kind of bombing anywhere in the Middle East, a lot of tourists shut off all those tours there, whether
Mhm.
it's the cruise ships or whether it's going to see the Valley of the Kings or the pyramids. And two ramifications that is, one, you are missing an incredible safe country that
Mhm.
otherwise would be so welcoming and you would be totally unaware of what's happening. And two, these cultures rely so much on tourism. Every time we get scared and jump away, people were struggling. Now, our reason
Yes.
to travel isn't to help the rug merchant out in Turkey or the guy selling papyrus outside the Great Pyramid, but those are family men and family women who have kids and have careers. And every time we change our mind and decide to go someplace safe, we are, denying them a livelihood as well. So it's
Mhm.
it's it's a very much an open thing where we have to respect both sides of the equation.
Sure. I think that's a great answer. There are always families, businesses, and people that are involved behind the scenes that we need to remember. Now, long before modern Iran existed, or
Mm.
even Islam or anything, there was Persia. So, Persia, which is Iran now, has an extraordinary ancient heritage with art, literature, cuisine, architecture, and science. For someone who knows their history as deeply as you do, how important is that long journey from ancient Persia to modern Iran in understanding the country that we see today? Because you've been there when times were better. Tell people how wonderful this country is.
Iran is just absolutely amazing. It's the people are beautiful and welcoming. The
Hmm.
culture, we don't think too much about Iran today is kind of get eclipsed by the modern experience, what we think Iran
Right.
is. But the Persian culture is one of the strongest and most longest lasting empires of all time. And there are
Hmm.
places that as a documentary filmmaker, doors can open for me. I've worked for National Geographic, PBS, BBC, all
Sure.
those people. So quite often I get to go there in armored vehicles and extra safety. We don't really need it.
Yeah.
But it also allows me to see all that ancient history that a lot of people aren't even aware of. And there's some
Yes.
amazing sites in Iran, like Persepolis, which was the capital of the Persian Empire, which is
Yes.
jaw-droppingly gorgeous. It was said it was destroyed by Alexander the Great when he ruled through there in the 320s BC or so. And it is sort of a beautiful ruin with no
Hmm.
it's just a bunch of pillars holding up the sky in the middle of an open ancient desert plain. And it's so transporting, and you can't help but sit there and recognize how much time has eclipsed. That's why I
Hmm.
love the ancient world in general, not just Iran, but the other place I've been to, Syria, Turkey, Jordan,
Hmm.
Israel, Egypt. We live here in the States, and you remember, when we just had our 250th anniversary
Yeah.
country, it's like, that is a drop in the bucket
In
for
the
Iran.
bucket.
We're talking about
Absolutely.
5,000 years ago, whatever. There were amazing sites. And I think that's what drives me to talk about these places, to write about them, to
Hmm.
travel, to make the films is we shouldn't forget where we came from. And even
Absolutely.
people in the political divide say, well, I'm not Arab, I'm not Persian, I'm not even European.
Who
We are
cares?
all human. It's one civilization, and we owe a
Right.
lot to the pharaohs and to the kings and queens and
Yep.
officials of the ancient world because they did it first.
The cradle of civilization was in that area, Mesopotamia. We have to remember that. I'm blessed to own several Persian rugs that came from Iran, and the artistry and the beautiful weaving and the textile industry that exists in Iran. And I was able to buy those before they put the kibosh on that. But just the amazing art and the intellectual property that the Persians have given us throughout the ages. Many people may not realize that, but the Persians also gave us algebra. So there are a lot of things that the Persians gave us that we use today in our culture. And so we can only hope that there will be peace so that one day we can all travel again
Precisely,
to
right. Both
Iran
ways.
and
A lot of
see it.
Iranians like to see the US, so it goes both ways.
Absolutely.
It's a shame that for so long that
Absolutely.
Iron Curtain has been shut.
I know. So that is so, so true. Well, Let's turn now to one of the other major players in the conflict, which is Israel. And I'd like to make a personal observation here. I've traveled to Israel. I know you have. And when I did it, affected me profoundly as a Christian, walking through Jerusalem and traveling in Israel, the streets where Jesus and the apostles walked, the beautiful landscapes. But beyond the religious significance, Israel is just fascinating destination. Archaeology, food, architecture, beaches, deserts, ancient cities, just really a wonderful place to travel if you're interested. So, if someone were planning a trip to Israel when circumstances allow, and I know that there are trips that are going to Israel right now, what would you consider absolutely essential to see?
Well, the first thing you think about Israel, people don't recognize this, is how small it is. It's about the
Yes,
size of New
tiny.
Jersey.
Yes.
So you figure you could see a lot of it in a week. Now, the
Mhm,
only international airport is Tel Aviv, so everybody flies in.
mhm.
It's a very modern city. And you see
Yes.
Jaffa, which is just south of Tel Aviv, and you can see some lovely ruins there. But everyone does a beeline directly to Jerusalem, which is an hour inland. And you can see why, because Jerusalem is right. It's just as evocative as you imagine. If you had one of those picture Bibles as a kid
Mhm.
and you think of Jericho and you think of David and stuff and the landscape and the rocky terrain, you still see it. The
Absolutely.
biblical world is still very,
It
very much
is.
there. And it's an easy country to get around. It's more expensive than the others, I think, because it's more tied to the West and therefore everything's elevated in terms of cost, but still much cheaper than traveling to Western Europe or elsewhere. You have to see the Red Sea. I mean, Masada is an amazing site. You get to
Yes.
Masada?
Yes, I did. Wonderful, wonderful.
And if people don't know the story there, that's where the Jewish revolt of about 70 AD, where they all ended up at the very end and decided to commit themselves rather than submit to Roman law. And beyond that, it's just a beautiful place to look out over the Dead Sea and
Yeah.
the Judaian desert, the Judean desert, I'm sorry, and
Mhm.
just recognize just how timeless this place is. And it is a place you can still travel now. Now it's tricky because the West Bank is right there. Jericho, which is one of my favorite sites because it's one of the oldest inhabited cities ever, if not
Mhm.
the oldest, they say. It goes back 5,000 years. And we know it from the Old Testament,
Mhm.
Joshua, and the walls come tumbling down. But I did a documentary there years ago for History Channel or Geographic, I forget who, and they were bringing up these skulls, these human skulls,
Wow.
about 7,000 years ago, maybe,
My
and they had plaster all over them. So someone had taken their deceased mother or wife or child or whatever with great respect. They put them out so all the flesh went away, and then they coated them in basically a plaster and then put shells in their eyes and then kept
my.
them within their house, almost like as an offering. And at first
Yes.
you started to see them, but then you recognize what a loving way it is for them to sort of keep them alive, literally keep, you know, their
Memorialize
granddad,
them.
whoever alive. But it also just shows you that so little has changed. People's
Yeah.
love and appreciation for each other and the remembrance and believing in a higher God or whatever that God may be started way back long before the
Right.
rise of the three great modern religions.
Right. I agree. I think there is just so much to see in Israel. Let's also talk about Egypt because I know that Egypt is your favorite country and it's a place that I have tried to get to twice. And every time you talk about it, I've had the trips be canceled on me. I was supposed to go there this year and it was canceled. So tell us about Egypt
Well, I mean, I
and
could do a whole podcast
I
just on
know, of
that.
course you
I've made
could.
like 2
I know.
dozen films on it. My first book was about Egypt. So,
My
stop
goodness.
me when I started
Oh,
weighing on too long. The first thing to think about Egypt is, look, and I don't wanna everyone has to make their own comfort level decision, but Egypt is safe. And a lot of time there's a reaction to anything in the Arab or Muslim world because of something that they say happened 2,000 kilometers away. Egypt is stable and it has such a strong tourist infrastructure. They say that if you took tourism out of Egypt, it would be Libya. So they keep you safe for one thing. When you're in a group of more than 4 or 5, you always have a van with somebody with a gun, which you never need, but they really, really want to make sure you're comfortable and you're safe there.
right.
But where to see, you definitely want to go to Egypt as a group, I think. And I've been there many
Mhm.
times on my own, both as a filmmaker and because I know Cairo, I got friends there. But it's a tough place to get around. It's hot, it's noisy. Cairo is the largest city in Africa, and it feels like it. It's noisy and polluted and chaotic. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Mhm.
but it's intimidating. So
Okay.
having a tour group there, a tour leader to help you. But then clearly you have to spend a few days in Cairo seeing the Great Pyramids and the
Uh-huh.
amazing new Grand Egyptian Museum, the $1 billion museum that just opened this year. And you can see where the money went. It looks right over the pyramids, the Giza Plateau, and it has all the King Tut treasures, the Howard Carter found in 1922, the gold mask. I was just there shooting there a few months ago, and it's just still jaw dropping after so many times of seeing it.
Mm.
And then, of course, you have to fly down south to Luxor, the Valley of the
Uh-huh.
Kings, and Thebes, and see where King Tut was buried, and see Thebes and Karnak. And then a lot of people sail up the Nile in a felucca for a few days, just pull
Uh-huh.
over at night. So if you do Egypt, you want to do it right. You want to do Cairo, and then get yourself down to southern end and see Aswan, Luxor, and then maybe take a felucca ride. So give yourself at least 10 days to do it right.
Uh-huh. Mhm. What about Alexandria? Is there anything to see there that's left?
Yeah, I'm such an ancient snob. It's like I say, well, by the time the Greeks came, history was over.
Yeah.
If it's not
Yeah.
1000 BC,
The
yeah. So
Ptolemaic pharaohs.
yeah, Ptolemaic, that's 320 BC. That's so recent. It is. I love it. I think it's much more European feeling because it's right there on the Mediterranean. A lot of
Uh-huh.
it's a much more manageable city than Cairo. Cairo is chaotic. Alexandria is much smaller. It has the beautiful Ptolemaic architecture in terms of. I wouldn't say Ptolemaic. It's more the colonial. Most of that's gone away. So
Uh-huh.
poor Egypt, after the pharaohs finally fell to the Persians about 500 BC, they were pretty much ruled by outsiders up until they got
Uh-huh.
independence in the mid 20th century. And you see a lot of that colonial architecture from the French and the British period starting to
Uh-huh.
molder right there, but it's lovely because it still feels time worn. But if you look,
Uh-huh.
you can still find the catacombs from the Roman and Ptolemaic times. The beaches are lovely. The Lighthouse of Alexandria is long gone, but you can walk
Yeah.
out there, have a great fish restaurant. It's not my favorite. I would go up there for a day or two, but to me, the greatest thrills of Egypt are away from the Delta and further south.
Wonderful. Let's talk about Jordan. You've mentioned Jordan. Tell me what you would recommend seeing there.
Jordan is also a place that's pretty stable at all times, thank goodness. They're polished. They kind of stay out of things, even though they share a border with Israel, the Jordan River.
Uh-huh.
But one of the most spectacular ancient sites in all the world is in Jordan. That's Petra.
Petra,
And
yeah.
Petra is jaw-dropping. If anyone saw the last Indiana Jones movies, or I guess the third one, or whatever it was, with Sean Connery, it ends there. There's a beautiful thing called the Wadi, and it's one of the most remarkable approaches to any ancient site because it's a dry riverbed. Wadi is Egyptian for dry riverbed, so it's in the middle of the desert, and and a lot of people take camels or donkeys down this ravine, and it's more for show. You can walk it in 20 minutes. But then you turn a corner and you see what they call the library, and it's really an ancient
Uh-huh.
tomb from the Nabateans, which is about 200 BC. They fell to the Romans about 100 BC, so that's the time period.
Uh-huh.
And it is essentially a necropolis, but it is so beautifully, ornately preserved that you walk in there and you feel like you're in another landscape. It's this lunar landscape, and you cannot believe that this thing ever existed. And you walk around, and there are dozens and dozens of these places. And it was unknown to outsiders until like the early 20th century or so.
Uh-huh.
So they've only now been excavating. I've done a couple shows over there where they're still finding things deep on top of the altars and stuff.
Uh-huh.
So the Nabatean culture was not much was known about it. They were traders between the Saudi Arabia, between the Gulf, and between Israel and the Holy Land.
Uh-huh.
And we're only now learning a great deal of how they lived and how they disappeared. So everyone should go to Petra, and you could do it for a few days from Israel if you want to. Keep in mind if Israel is the size of Jersey, I think Jordan's the size of, I don't know, Pennsylvania, if even that, maybe smaller. So we're not talking huge distances, just getting across the Allenby Bridge and dealing with all these issues. And there's a place called Jerash, just north of Amman, the capital, which is a Roman site that no one goes to. And I have
Uh-huh.
been there as a tourist where I've had it to myself. And there's nothing more transporting than walking around and just basically feeling like you're one with these people and this culture that's long gone. Because most of the time, a favorite site of mine, I'm going back there next week, is Pompeii.
Yeah.
But if you've been to Pompeii, there's 6 bloody million people everywhere. And it's just impossible to get a
It
good
is.
picture without seeing the entire tour group from Kansas there. Not
Yes.
so much at Jerash.
How cool. Well, I will keep that in my file cabinet for when I get there. That'll be a wonderful suggestion. Thank you very much. I know that you also have been to Syria, which really hasn't been accessible to many Americans. So tell us about Syria.
There's a place. I'm sorry, let me
That
cut
I
you
was
off.
just going to say, I've met some very, very nice Syrians in my travels and in America. So tell us about Syria because I'm fascinated by that.
If you get to go there, and even now, of course, I mean, they had a civil war that ended, what, maybe in 24, about 2 years
Mm.
ago. Both sides were, kind of, yeah, it's hard to root for either side.
Yeah,
But it's
just a
over and the place is
mess.
a mess. I was there only once. No, twice. I did a show there. What am I saying? I did a show there about 6 years ago. Let me get to that. The first time I was there as a tourist, which was the '90s. And at that point, things were already bad. The Assad government in the '90s
Mhm.
was not talking to the US government, and it was impossible to get a visa. But I was traveling through Turkey, another place that's, why not Arab? It's one of my favorite places.
Mhm.
And I did a trip. I was going south to see some sites in Turkey. He said, "Well, we go to Syria too. Do you want to come along?" I said, "Well, I have a US passport." "That's okay. I know the guy at the border. It's fine." So we went down to Aleppo and we bummed around in Damascus. We spent a couple of days down there. And it was truly beautiful to see because it's one of those countries, first of all, that people were so grateful to see a Westerner there. They would, "Please come in my home, eat for free." They wanted, their Arab
Wow,
hospitality is like
I
no
know.
other place.
It's
They are
true.
so generous. The great sadness about that, Aleppo, which is a city in the north, and Damascus, of course, the capital, there's a town, is an ancient Roman site called Palmyra. That's when I went back. I
Mm.
did a film.
Oh, yeah, Palmyra.
Palmyra was totally wiped out by ISIS during the war. And I did a film for PBS about how they're trying to put the pieces back together, but there's nothing left, nothing
Yeah,
left. So in those 30 years between trips, it was really, really heartbreaking to go back and see how much of the ancient sites were destroyed in a mere blink of an eye.
yeah,
The walls of Aleppo stood for 2,000 years, a citadel, and then in one generation, they're being destroyed by a bunch of people who consider all statues heathen, and they were videotaping it and posting it, and it just breaks my
oh,
heart.
yeah. It's horrible, horrible. I know. You just pray for the people of Syria who have just
Yeah.
been under such stress and duress for so many years.
I have a few Egyptology archaeologist friends there. Said the things are very tough. The water supply is rough. They can't. It's not like a Taliban state yet, but it could very easily fall into that world. So things are very precarious in Syria. So clearly, Syria and Iran, obviously, are two places I would not recommend any visitor or listener go to now. Israel and
Right.
Egypt are safer. Jordan is safe. Turkey is safe. Just you have
Yeah.
these when you go to these places, you got to be aware of that you're going to another culture. The key thing I
Sure.
tell people is I see this in Egypt, and it drives me crazy. It makes me so angry. We were shooting in Karnak, which is the beautiful ancient temple down south
Mhm.
in Luxor. And it's still a holy site, even though it's pharaonic. The Egyptians treat any religious site as, it is their pride and their joy. And
Of
and
course.
why they're not praying to Horus anymore, they still respect it as you would a church or a mosque or a synagogue. And while we're shooting there, almost every day, a tour bus from Sharm el Sheikh, the
Yeah.
dive, they
Mhm.
arrive from the Red Sea, and all these people get out in their bikinis,
Yeah.
most Russians, and they get out and they're all slathered up and they're walking around, it's so insulting. They walk around their flip flops and their bikinis and their sun hats, make very, very loudly and tramping over it. And to me, it's tantamount to walking into like St. Paul's Cathedral and doing that,
Sure.
or
Right.
into the
It's
Muhammad Ali Mosque,
disrespectful. Yeah.
to the
Have some
people.
respect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, so
Exactly.
I forgot how I got on that. On,
It's kinda stuck in your craw, and
yeah, it does. It does.
that's something that I feel too is I hate when Americans go abroad and are disrespectful, and I always think, "You're an ambassador for your country. I don't care who you are, I don't care where you go. Always be respectful, kind, and courteous. Obey the law, behave like you'd want somebody to behave in your country. Goodness
It's a
gracious."
respect. That's exactly where I was going with that
Yeah.
story. Is like
Yeah.
maybe you may not like the headscarf here. Maybe you may don't want to.
Sure.
You don't want to wear long sleeve shirts into the Sophia.
Yeah.
Hagia Sophia.
Agia, Sophia, yeah.
But you're in their country, and
That's
this is their
right.
mode, and respect them. You are been invited in their country to see that, so respect the laws. Even if you don't like, look in it. There's a lot of laws in terms of civil rights. I'm a gay man, and I have to be careful about what I say when I do in certain places with my husband. But I also respect. I'm not the kind of person that's going to be flagrant about anything, anyways. I'm going to
Sure.
respect them because I am there for the people, and I'm a visitor, just like you go into somebody's home. Show respect.
Absolutely. Just always be respectful. That's, I think, the golden rule of travel anyway.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah, no matter
Very
where it
true.
is, no matter where it is.
Right. Now, do you have any other countries, before we move on, that you would wish to highlight for our audience that you think are must-sees?
Well, we didn't talk about Turkey, and Turkey obviously
Yeah, I love Turkey
Tur
too.
straddles Europe and the Middle East, of course, and then often they call it its own thing. It's not Arab, it's not Europe,
Yeah.
it's not part of the EU. I love Turkey, and Turkey is such very different. Have you been there?
Yes, I
Yeah.
have. Turkey.
Yeah,
How do you pronounce it now? Turkey. I know. And we laugh. We're like, how come all of a sudden it's different?
yeah.
What brings that about? But whatever.
That's internal stuff that I won't get involved in. But then if you go to Turkey, you have the western edge, you have, the Aegean, where you have all the beautiful Ephesus.
I
I just
love
wrote a book about
Ephesus.
ancient Troy.
My
You can go to Troy.
goodness. Yeah.
That's amazing. And then the most amazing beaches in the world, Kosh and
Yeah.
Bodrum and stuff. And then you go further east, and then you get the Hittite ruins, which is amazing culture. That rival the other Bronze Age cultures.
Yeah.
Troy, which is amazing. And it's got. I do cruise talks as well. I do a lot of cruise talks, and I'm doing one for Holland America next
Yeah.
Sunday. Yeah. And one of the talks that I always give is the world's most mysterious places. And number
Yeah.
one on the list is in Turkey. And it's a place that a lot of people won't know about unless they watch shows or they read history about it. It's a place called Göbekli Tepe. Have you ever heard of it?
No, I have not. So you've stumped me.
Göbekli Tepe is a site. It's not like Ephesus where it's jaw dropping in terms of its beauty, though it is pretty gorgeous. It is a site that shouldn't exist. It is in a windswept plain in the middle of Turkey. Eastern Turkey, really. And it is a temple that goes back about 10,000 years, long before we ever thought we had monumental architecture, before we
Right.
thought people settled down. At that point, they thought hunter-gatherers, and they thought people were still, domesticating sheep, but nothing else. But here is this temple that was built 5,000 years before the pyramids. So get your head around.
Wow. Yeah, that's impressive.
And then for about 1,500 years, it was worshipped by what seemed to be the local tribes of the plains of Turkey. But they didn't live there long term. They found some settlements around it. So one of the big arguments you always have in paleontology, or you have in the rise of humankind, is what came first? Did religion give rise, or people coming together give rise to cities and religion? Which people tend to think first you come together, then you create a god, then you
Yeah.
create a hierarchy and kings and queens and officials. That's been pretty much the going thesis. But this turns that on its butt, because basically there doesn't seem to be a culture. There seems to be what is clearly a spiritual religious center. So what people think is some sort of shared religion or some sort of belief brought them together, and then they went back to their own small tribes and came together. So in a way,
Wow.
it reverses the narrative, which shows we don't know what the answer is. But here
Yeah.
is a place, Göbekli Tepe, that no one thought would ever possibly exist. And it's only been found in 1994. So it totally upends everything we thought we knew about the rise of humankind. It is a
Yeah.
fantastic site.
Wow. Well, that's another one I need to put on my list to see, because you're giving me a wonderful education. This is fantastic. All right. So this is the last of these travel questions we're going to do right now. How would you stay informed if you were planning a trip right now to the Middle East? What's the best way that you think to stay informed about where to go? What's the latest security situation? Is that statedepartment.gov? I mean, is that the news? Tell me what you would do
I think
right
all
now.
of that. I mean, the State Department clearly should follow it. I mean, like Syria and Iran or level
Right.
or something, do not travel. Totally
Right.
agree with
Don't
that.
go.
But then
Yeah.
oftentimes, and I don't want to be the one to say don't pay attention to what the State Department says, but Jordan and Israel and Egypt are probably on level 3, and that's unfair, I think, because
Okay.
you could fly there anytime. You just gotta kind of be aware. I think the best thing to do is educate yourself. Go on the we're in an age now where blogs and you could go on Facebook sites. Be careful about going to tourist sites because they'll tell you everything's hunky dory and
Oh,
maybe,
yeah, and maybe it's not. Yeah.
yeah. But, so much has changed. I don't know how long you've been traveling, but I did my first backpack trip through the Middle East in 91.
Okay.
And that's when I fell in love with Egypt and the ancient world. And I thought I'd take a
Mhm.
month, and it was 8 months long. At that point in 1981, clearly there was no cell phones.
Yeah.
There was
Sure.
no internet. You to make a call home to mom or dad or your friends, you'd have to like find some crappy post office somewhere in Istanbul and pay $16,000 in your left leg just to say, "Hi, mom, I'm alive." You know, yeah.
Yeah.
They had Lonely Planet guidebooks and things, maybe, but they were out of date because they only got published once or twice a year. So, first of all, it's always exciting. I look back at it now, what a golden time, because then you fly
Yeah.
by the seat of your pants. And I'm
Yeah.
lucky. I've been to all those countries multiple times. I never, ever felt uncomfortable. I never felt threatened. Again, I don't want to be a Pollyanna and say those things don't happen, but the people took care of you. And that was
Sure.
I remember showing up in a small town in eastern Iran, and I had read the train schedule wrong. I thought I was going to a bigger city, and I showed up like 10 p.m. at night, and it had the I was transposed, and I went to the wrong place on the wrong train. Of course, I didn't know any Farsi, and I'm stuck.
Right.
And this older woman shows up with a bunch of watermelons. I think she was selling them, and through but very little English she had, she recognized what was going on, and she invited me back to her place with she and her son, and put us up until we could get out of there. I could get out of there a day or two later. They're absolutely wonderful. And I spoke no Farsi. They spoke almost no English. But we somehow communicated. I
Yes.
pulled out a book. I showed a map of Chicago where I lived at the time. They talked about where they took us to where they would, where they would get their food and vegetables. And on the way out, I remember thinking, should I pay them? What do I do? What's what high courtesy? And I'm really glad that I decided, no, I don't want to make it feel like this is transactional. So I went to
Right.
the market and I bought a bunch of fruits and vegetables for them, which I know they liked. It came to like $2 and they were beaming. It was exactly the kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
that's that. But once again, those are the people that you meet. We talked before we started recording about how world travel changes you forever. Here's
That's
an
right.
example. I will see that woman and that young man's face forever who just took the stranger in. And you have to ask yourself, if that happened in New York, would people down the hallway in 11J let a
Mhm.
stranger from Iran stay the night?
Right.
The question of hospitality, and you don't get that until you leave the country.
That's
And
right.
boy, you can't put that genie back in the bottle.
That's right, and that's such a wonderful thing. I love that story. That's amazing. Well, let's now talk about my favorite topic, which is food, because I can never have a conversation about travel without talking about food. So, hummus, shawarma, pita, kibbeh, falafel, kabsa.
You're getting me hungry. You're getting me hungry.
So tell me if I'm a serious foodie and I want to plan a culinary journey through the Middle East, what country should be on my
Oh,
itinerary?
that's yeah, and I knew you're gonna ask. That's impossible to say 'cause it's all a matter of
No, it's
I can
all
tell you
delicious.
I can kinda tell you in general what each country is sort of known for and what they
Yeah.
excel. So, starting at the bottom, Egypt has very earthy foods. They like a lot of beef.
Yeah.
Thing called it's a race street food. The best street food in all the Middle East is in
Oh,
Cairo,
yeah.
Luxor. There's a thing called kushari, which I absolutely love. It's all pasta. If you're on an anti-pasta diet, don't take it, but it's like rice and macaroni and fried onions and a sauce.
Mm,
And it comes in a big steaming bowl and it costs about 2 cents.
yes.
Get it off the street. Now make sure you go to a proper place. I've got amoebic dysentery a few times in Cairo, which, got
Right,
the wrong
right.
place.
No
But
fun.
yeah,
I've
make
had
sure it's
that before too from Honduras. Yeah.
yeah, I've had it down there too, I think, yeah. But they're really good for those kind of earthy, they like their meats, a lot of oils. Israel probably has the best falafel.
And I think hummus too. That's my opinion, but
I would
I
go
think they
more
have
for
a
Lebanon. We didn't talk about Lebanon. I haven't been to Lebanon.
yeah,
But
I
a
haven't been
Lebanon,
to Lebanon.
it's richer. It's Lebanon has if people ask you the Middle East food that we know here in the States, where
Yeah.
it's kind of come from, I say Lebanon is the closest to the Mediterranean place down the street from
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
That's the
and they have
classic.
wonderful kibbeh, right?
Yeah, they
Yeah,
do.
so,
They do.
yeah.
Syria is really good for I won't say spicier food, but more complex. A lot of pomegranate, a lot of walnuts. They would
Yeah.
chop them all up, and they also like mezza, a lot of mezza.
Yes, love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Turkey is known for its kebabs, meat.
Mm,
My husband at the time we were there the first time was a vegetarian. Is like he ate French fries and hummus every day for 2 weeks. There was nothing else. I remember when
ugh,
you go to Turkey, you want to eat the meat. That's what it's known
yeah.
for. It's named for the
So
grilled
good.
meats. Yeah.
Yeah, the grilled
Iran might
meats.
be my favorite. Iran is much more delicate.
Yes.
It's saffron, it's got the mint,
Oh,
rice,
yeah.
it'll have the kebabs and stuff. They're all very similar in that regard. Little pheasants that they kinda cook small. It's a different sensibility. You're creeping towards India and Afghanistan, which
Mhm.
also has great food. And so it kind of bridges those 2 worlds, Central Asia versus the Middle East.
Yeah,
Can't go wrong in any
yeah.
of those countries.
Oh, no. The food is just phenomenal. There's just something to be said about the Middle Eastern sensibilities and the use of
Yeah,
cinnamon and
yeah.
cardamom and almonds and pistachio and just delightful, I know I'm getting
Yeah, I'm
hungry
getting
as
hungry. It's
we
like getting close to lunch here. And I have a dairy allergy, which is good to know if anybody does. So except for Lebanon, which loves their yogurt, Egypt, Iran, they have very little dairy, very little butter in a lot of their things. You can kind of get around without using dairy. So if you have any lactose issues,
Mhm.
Mediterranean food is a good option.
Yeah. So, what is the one dish that you would tell someone you cannot leave the Middle East without trying this?
Yeah. Oh boy, it's a good question. Again, I would say kushari is always my favorite because
Okay,
no one's heard of
kushari.
kushari. You can't get anywhere else. And
Yeah,
again,
I've never had.
it's street food. And if you go to Egyptian place here, you won't be able to get it. It's called full medalist, if you know what that is too. It is
No.
the Egyptians love their beans, kind of their kidney beans, and they will boil it down and cook it for 24 hours sometimes with a lot of oil. They love their olive.
Mhm.
And so what you get this flavorful, rich, earthy again, beautiful spread, and you get the Middle East, you get the pita and you dip it in.
Pita, yeah.
Those are 2 of my favorites, I think, and I say that probably because I spend so much time in Egypt. But yeah, like, you really can't go wrong. Just make
Yeah.
sure just make sure you go to a place that looks a little clean. Because again,
Clean.
I was doing a film, one of my first films of the Great Sphinx of Egypt, and it was following the, stonemasons around. They were restoring the Sphinx because it had fallen into ruin, and they
Mhm.
were they were hiring all the local stonemasons to do it because all the bricklayers from Italy or whatever were making it worse. And at the end of the shoot, the foreman, and what a beautiful man named Saeed, his galabai, a very traditional, he invited me back to his place for dinner, and it happened to be Ramadan. And Ramadan, if you know, is
Yeah.
the devout do not eat from sunrise to sunset. But I
Sunset,
got there
yeah.
like 2 in the afternoon, and they were so proud of the feast that they said, "Neil, you have to eat." And the place that he lives no longer exists, which is sad because it's very evocative, but also very poor. It's a place called the City of the Dead, and they're touring it down now as we speak. It was medieval mausoleums that were built between the 11th and 13th century for the Caliphate and that. And after they all fell, the poorest citizens of Cairo moved in there. No
Mhm.
running water or anything like that, but at least they had shelter. And Saeed lived adjacent to one of those. And I mention that
Mhm.
because they had no plumbing. So I didn't know what was in these dishes. But his wife, Saeed's wife, came with this huge silver tray of all of these bowls, of all of these foods, some looking amazing, some looking rather questionable, just bits of gristle floating. But I also realized why the entire village was watching with great pride. The last thing I could do was say no. It would be such an insult to say, "Oh,
Well,
no,
of
go back to
course.
the hotel." So I got a spoon and I tucked in. And a lot of it was great. And they were very proud of it. And then I spent 10 days in bed with amoebic dysentery. But, when I tell that story now, people say, "If you had known," I said, "If I had known, I still would do it again." It would have been a greater insult to
I know.
use these people
Yeah.
hospitality than,
Yes.
I mean, that
Yeah.
said, it was a pretty awful. No, I don't wish amoebic dysentery, as you know, on anybody. So
Of course, and anybody who's ever had it, yeah.
yeah,
Woo,
yeah, yeah,
Lord, I think when I had it and my stomach wasn't the same for a year after
yeah,
I
yeah,
had
yeah.
it.
It can linger.
It was rough. This has been wonderful. Before we close, I want to bring our conversation back ultimately to the human beings behind all of these headlines and all of this that we've talked about, because it's very easy, as our topic was focusing on traveling in a time of war, and when we're sitting safely in the United States in our homes and we're watching the news or we're scrolling on the internet and we're seeing another map and another video of a missile launch or another speech by a politician, and then we turn off the television and we go about our business. But whether we're talking about somebody who lives in Tehran or Tel Aviv or Amman, Kuwait City, Muscat, Doha, anywhere else, the conflict and the instability that has taken such an enormous psychological and human toll on all of these people. And we need to keep all of them in our prayers.
Yeah,
And we need
absolutely.
to constantly pray for peace and pray for their healing. And I just would ask our listeners, our audience, to remember them because
These are
that's
people no different than you and I. It just, they may
absolutely.
dress differently, eat differently, speak differently, but they have families and relationships and
Yes,
jobs. And, what's happening in
absolutely.
Tehran is terrible. I have friends in Tel Aviv, and the
Yeah,
bomb scares are and then they do it on purpose. So they get tired, and then they get, they do it in the middle of the night so you can't eat, and they get people stressed out. There's psychological warfare on top of the physical warfare on all
absolutely.
sides. And again, the knock-on
Absolutely.
effect of that, even those aren't in the crosshairs, like I mentioned, the guys selling papyrus or T-shirts
Yeah,
in Luxor or wherever, they're suffering too because we don't come. And
that's
again, we have to
right.
think of our own safety, but we also got to, as you say, think about how lucky we are that we can sit here and have these discussions where a
That's
lot of
right.
people are just simply trying to get through day by day.
They're just trying to make a living and feed their families,
Yeah, yeah,
and
survive.
so it's something to remember how blessed we are and that there are others who have it so much worse than we do, and to keep remembering them in our prayers.
Precisely.
And, yeah, so, Neil, this has been wonderful. My goodness, we can talk and talk
Oh, we
forever, and
just scratched the surface. I know.
I hope you will come back to us,
Love to.
and
Thank
thank you for joining me on A Lady Well Traveled. I hope it has given our listeners a better perspective on what's going on in the Middle East and a deeper appreciation for the fabulous people and the fabulous culture there.
Everyone should try to experience if they can. I think again, once you go, you only want to go back.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, one of the things I would love to ask you to do is to tell people all about where they can find you and the references to your work, your films, your books, your travels. Where can they find you on maybe your website, your socials? Please tell us.
NeilLaird.com is the best place. And I'm updating the website as we speak because what started
Okay,
out as just films a few years ago, I've now written 3 novels. I'm doing public
awesome.
tours, like all the cruises. I'm looking at doing tours in Italy, Pompeii, and elsewhere where I know so much. But if you go to NeilLaird.com, I've written 3 novels about a TV crew that time travels to the ancient world. And Egypt, Pompeii, and now Troy, which came out just as the Odyssey came out. When I started writing, I had no idea it was going to dovetail.
Serendipitous.
Exact. And what's fun about that is it's a modern day crew that goes back in the past and tries not to mess thing up. But they
Wow.
want to win an Emmy, they want to win an award. So the tagline is messing up history, one episode at a time.
I like it. I like it. Yeah, let's see if we can get involved, but not screw things up too
Yeah,
badly, huh? Yeah.
exactly. The butterfly effect can be really terrible if the wrong person lives and you realize, oh, well, then Rome fell 300 years earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been delightful. So thank you so much. I hope you'll come back.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Shannon. It's a pleasure.
Sure. And so I'd like to just say to our audience, thank you for traveling with us today. And you can always reach me at Shannon at a ladywelltraveled.com. That's Shannon at a ladywelltraveled.com. That's traveled with 2 L's. I'm on all the streaming platforms, and if you'd like to refer your friends and family to me, I'd greatly appreciate it. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, please leave me a review. I'd love to hear from you. Or if you have suggestions for a future topic, I'd love to hear that as well. And I'd like to close with this: God created this beautiful world just for you. All you need to do is get out there and see it. Until we meet again, bye bye.